Hello, thank you for being in a new video. This time I have the unboxing of the Realme 13 Pro Plus. Let's get started. And this device is one of the most attractive that you will find in terms of price-quality ratio. It's a device that focuses a lot on photography, but still sits in the upper mid-range. There are two versions of it. The cheaper model has 8GB of RAM with 256 of storage at a price of 8,499 pesos. On screen you see the reference price in dollars to give you an idea. On the other hand, there is also a version with more RAM and more storage. Specifically, 512GB at a price of 9,799 pesos. Again, you have the reference price on screen just to give you an idea, because remember very well that the prices here are not the same as over there. Once we have known the price, join me in taking this device out of its box. And the first thing we come across is this case that has the usual paper inside, but it also includes the tool to remove the SIM card tray. So all that is contained in this case, which by the way has a solid design, giving a synthetic leather texture, although it does feel like plastic, but at least it is a textured case that gives a special touch to the device in case you prefer to use it with a case. But in a moment, I'll show you how it looks with and without a case, so you as always can tell me how you would prefer to use this device. For now, I left a bit of glue on it, which makes it look very ugly. Finally, we come across the cell phone, which is exaggeratedly pretty. I told you it puts a lot of emphasis on photography, but it also puts a lot of emphasis on design. As you can see, it has a very nice finish. It reflects the lighting beautifully. You're not going to get fingerprints on it. So personally, I would use this phone without a case because it's extremely nice. When you put this case on it, it goes down a lot in elegance. But it's up to you as a user, so let me know in the comments. Would you use it with a case or without a case? But let's see what else comes in the box here. We'll find your cable and your charger. As you can see, it comes with USB-A on this side. Obviously, the cable will have USB-C on the other side, and it's a remarkably thick cable to support all the power that this charger has, which I'll tell you about in a moment. But for now, that's the contents of the box. So let me put all of this back away, and I'll get back with you to give you more details on the specs that we found on this Realme Pro Plus. I've already got the device set up, so let's get into its specs below. It's 8.23mm thick and weighs 190 grams. Pay close attention to the weight and the thickness because we will be talking about a device that has an interesting battery. So please don't forget this data because we will use it later. The front comes protected with a kind of fusion between Armor Shield glass and Gorilla Glass. Remember that Realme has already used thick glass on its past generation devices, so it retains it here. It's a device that's going to stand up to drops pretty well. This is despite the fact that it has curved glass, so in terms of ruggedness it doesn't seem to disappoint. It also has the IP level of resistance against water and dust. So even though it won't be able to be submerged to extreme depths, if it does get into shallow water and you take it out, I think it's going to have a very high chance of surviving. In that sense, I think it does well enough, although there are other devices in this price range that offer a higher level of water resistance. The screen has a diagonal of 6.7 inches. We are talking about an AMOLED panel with a resolution of 2412 by 1080 pixels, 120 Hz in its refresh rate, and a peak brightness of 2000 nits when viewing HDR content. But even without watching HDR content, it's a pretty bright display, so that's a point that it delivers perfectly. I don't find it to be a poor quality display or anything like that. And this device also incorporates stereo sound with one speaker on the bottom and another speaker on the top. So far it goes with all points in its favor. The front camera is 32 megapixels with f-aperture 2.45 and fixed focus. And there we are looking at the capture before taking the picture as if to get a reference of what the preview looks like, which as you can see is completely burned in. And the photograph I think already shows a little more texture of the clouds. It should be clarified that it was a completely cloudy day, so it's a very intense backlight, but at least if you get to capture the texture of these clouds, so it doesn't look bad. And the level of detail I think is pretty good. Although in this case I had beauty mode on, so it gives me a little bit of a weird perception of my face, but it does have good detail. In this front camera, if it will have the ability to record video in 4K at 30 frames per second, so that's nice. On the back, we're going to find the 50 megapixel main camera with Sony's 701 Lithia sensor, f-aperture 1.88, autofocus and optical stabilization, then an 8 megapixel ultra-wide camera with f-aperture 2.2 and fixed focus. This would be the simplest camera of all three because then we will find the 50 megapixel telephoto camera also with another Sony Lithia sensor. In this case, Lithia 600 with f-aperture 2.65, autofocus and optical stabilization. I see, stabilization. For this price to find this photographic system, the truth is that I find it super attractive. We find main camera and telephoto camera with high resolution sensors. So in theory, it should give us quite attractive results in terms of zoom and portrait photography. Here you are looking at the photograph with the main camera. I like it quite a bit. It seems to me that it captures textures, colors well. Overall, it's a device that, as I say, focuses quite a bit on photography and does it with good quality. But seeing these photographs through the cell phone screen is more spectacular because the areas that receive more light in real life, as in this case that had the reflection of the sun, will emit more brightness through this screen. So it is really spectacular to see the photographs through this same cell phone. It is something that is difficult to demonstrate through a video recording, but believe me, when you see it in real life, you will like it a lot. And now we're looking at the photograph with the current focal length and 9 millimeters, which is 2x zoom. But since it has a Sony lithium sensor, it applies a crop, so it maintains a very good quality, almost as if it had another 2x telephoto camera. Next, we are looking at the picture with the 73mm lens, which is the 3x optical zoom. It actually looks very detailed as well, although with a little bit different color than what we saw in the previous cameras. So, maybe it doesn't keep color as consistent between all the cameras. Next, we're looking at the photograph with 144mm, that's 6x zoom. Because even at this 6x zoom setting, it still applies a crop inside the sensor because it also has a Sony lithium sensor. So it pretty much gives us optical quality at this focal length, which is pretty amazing. And watch, with the 10x zoom, it still maintains excellent quality. Believe me, it has far superior quality at this zoom setting to what we generally find in most competitors in this same price range. And while the device lets you get to much more zoom, here for example we're looking at 30x zoom photography, where it still seems to me to maintain an attractive quality, although I would say this would be the maximum level, where the device gives us good photography in terms of zoom, since the maximum it gets is 120x, but already the quality of the photograph looks very bad. So I would recommend you to go up to 30x, which I insist for this price range is too good a quality. And note that it's also going to give us the ability to record video in 4K at 30 frames per second. Although if you want to record with the ultra-wide camera, you'll have to go down to Full HD, and in fact this ultra-wide camera does not support 60 frames per second. So it seems that in terms of video, it is not as advanced as we saw in the picture, but in the review we will see the results. For now, let's move on to the specs. It comes with Realme UI 5.0 and Android 14. So it's positive that it does come factory upgraded. And on the box, it indicates that it comes with AI. That is, it comes with some artificial intelligence features. For example, in this case, you notice that the picture is not very well detailed, but through artificial intelligence, it is able to improve it in this way. This is an example that I showed you previously in my first impressions video. And it seems to me that it can be useful to try to restore some images with artificial intelligence. Of course, it also brings the photo eraser with artificial intelligence. So you can perfectly draw on top of whatever it is you want to delete. And through generative artificial intelligence, it's going to try to figure out what would be behind it and it's going to fill it in. Well, let's wait a little bit longer and there it is. Look at the result. It looks pretty convincing to me. But I'll tell you about the rest of the artificial intelligence features in the review. The battery is 5,200 mAh and supports 80-watt charging. And remember I told you to keep weight and thickness in mind? Well, it's just that this battery is bigger than what other devices that might get heavier or thicker usually have. So it really stands out a lot to incorporate this battery capacity and also a lot of power in charging, since usually the batteries that have more density do not support such fast charging. So in this case, I think they have found a very good balance to have a very large battery with a good charging capacity. It also includes fingerprint reader inside the screen, which was expected in this price range, and considering it has this screen, it was also expected. And the top model has 12 gigabytes of RAM that you can still upgrade to an additional 12 gigabytes of virtual RAM. Although I do not recommend using the additional virtual RAM, it would be an unnecessary expense. There is no possibility to put a micro SD card, but it is unnecessary. Having 512 gigabytes of storage, the truth is that it is brutal at this price. Consider that the 24,000 plus peso iPhone has only 128 gigabytes. So it's definitely beautiful to have 512 gigabytes in this price range. And finally, the processor is the Snapdragon 7S Gen 2. But to give you a better reference of the power it can achieve, here are some benchmarks I ran. In Geekbench, it gave 924 points in single core and 2,824 points in multi-core. You should know that this is a device that is not going to focus on raw power. I think that both at this price and even at lower prices, you can find more powerful processors, but obviously you will not find this photographic system and other details that you do find in this device. So if your top priority is the raw power of the processor, this could disappoint you a little, but if your priority is photos, you will definitely enjoy this device. On Antutu, it gave me the score of 682,414 points. So honestly, it's not a bad processor. You're not going to notice that the device goes very slow or anything like that, especially having so much RAM, but you're going to notice that maybe it's a processor that's not going to be able to give you the maximum power in games configured with the highest graphics quality. I think that only there you might notice that it is a processor that maybe is not so powerful, but in the rest of the system tasks, I don't think you will perceive that it is a processor that maybe is below some competitors. But I'll tell you all those details and show them to you in the video review. For now, we have reached the end of this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, you know you can tell me about it, and I'll see you next time.